Good morning, everyone. I'm Don Zavis, National Sales Trainer, Sales Coach, International Keynote Speaker. Want to welcome you to our Speaking of Sales sales training class today. Appreciate you being here. We are at beautiful sunny Tucson right now, and we are at the Arizona Sands Club. Look forward to having you join us. Got a great session for today. This is interesting because just realize this is a different time than we normally do it. We normally had our sessions at Friday at 9 o'clock. Now we're here on Wednesdays at 8 o'clock. We'll be on the second and fourth Wednesday of the month. So we welcome you being here. So for those that are joining us on YouTube Live, thank you. Facebook Live, thank you. YouTube Archive, thank you. Anybody through Restream, we thank you again. We're going to work dutifully and diligently to make this a good utilization of your time. As always, flanked by my partners in crime. Well, the other partner is over there, probably doing something criminal. But Dave's with me right now. So, David, you want to say hello to the world?
Yeah, hello. How you guys doing today?
Great.
Good.
There you go.
Great to be here in the stands early in the morning.
Yeah, this isn't early. This is like half the day's gone.
Right, but to the sand people, it's not even.
Oh, yeah, to the Sands people. Yeah, this is hardly getting started. Well, we have a great session for you today. The session that we're going to be doing, and Dave will be doing a pre-session for that, is what we call the day after Labor Day. I believe, and been doing this long enough, that there is something that happens to the business world the day after Labor Day. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to give you some tips and techniques and ideas and some things that you can do to kind of work in those regards. But David, what are you going to regale us with today?
Well, I think just exactly what you were talking about. We're just going to go over a few reasons why people seem to struggle in this time in sales in general. So we'll just go over some things why and hopefully some solutions as well.
Perfect. So Dave will do the first 10 minutes. We'll come back and finish that. So, Mr. Kamara, regale away.
Okay, cool. So, guys, what we want to talk about today. So, guys, we know that, regardless of what type of sales that we do, you sell products, services, but everything you do is just that a lot of people, unfortunately, have never really been trained fundamentally in sales and sort of walked into careers and sort of had to live through it. So we actually have a lot of these little gaps that happen. A lot of these little gaps are things that can be changed. We just have to recognize those things in ourselves, right? And so we're just going over a couple of reasons. So one of the first reasons is to actually just not even, people are not able to just not listening enough. What do I mean by that? Guys, when it comes to most of the time when people are getting into sales or getting into their services or start to selling, the problem is what you start to do. We're almost a little bit overexcited and we want to tell them all the things that we can save them with, right? When they tell us a little problem, let me tell you all the things why I'm going to help you. In reality, what most professionals and most seasoned salespeople do is recognize that in reality, we have to learn just to listen a little bit more. So what are certain things that we can do to increase our listening is incorporate questions as a mandatory aspect before you start ever telling a bit about your product, a bit about your service. What you want to first do is make sure you have a minimum of 3 to 5 questions you've already asked so that you're making the customer start to actually talk themselves, right? And so make sure we actually have, we pre-plan questions, right?
Right.
And more importantly, what we want to do is make sure that these questions, they make you appear to be an expert, which is always your job, is to make sure you look like an expert, right? Other things that people do, right? It's making sure that, are we really explaining our real value proposition of what we're actually doing, of our products or our services, right? Why people are actually going to buy our products. Once again, sometimes people jump into products and jump into services and not really breaking down or taking the time it actually takes to actually make sure they know, make sure all your features and benefits are laid out, right? But more importantly, if you listen correctly prior, they're actually going to tell you their pain points and problems so that you can actually incorporate into your presentation. And another thing is actually just being too timid. Okay? You'd be surprised how many people get into sales, and people who don't, one, realize that they're actually doing sales, right, in the first place. But guys, recognize that a lot of people go into this, they're actually timid, right? Maybe you're not so used to being around people, not so used to the socialization of being close to people. So we have to recognize that in ourselves. One of the first steps is self-actualization. Recognize who you are, what you're doing at all times. So one of the things is recognize if you're being a little bit too timid. So if you know that you're being a little bit too timid, one of the things is just thinking about and changing your mentality. Some of the things that people are timid about, obviously, asking for the sale or pushing a little bit in the sale. Guys, we have to recognize that, you know what, some things that you can think of is just like, I always say, look, I'm a professional no-taker. Okay? I'm a professional note-taker. It's just a way to think of it. Embrace the challenge mentally, right? A lot of sales is going to come down to our mentality of how we think about things, right? Some will, some won't. So what? Who's next? Is a mentality of recognizing that, guess what? Yes, somebody said no, but I have to get to the next thing. Not being timid about that. Guys, if there weren't enough no's, the yeses wouldn't be valuable enough. And so this is what we have to recognize so we can change our mentality. Other things, just follow-up.
That's huge.
Right? The average salesperson, quits after 2, 3, 4 times. But guys, guess what? I'm from a Harvard Business School. They said it takes about 6 to 7 follow-up calls, follow-up meetings with somebody to actually secure the sale. So what is that really meaning? That most of us are just quitting just a little bit too early. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're actually pushing enough, following up. Guys, make a rule in your head. 6 to 7 times, okay, and to get to somebody. Just because people are busy or not following up quick enough does not mean they don't need your product, does not mean that your product is not amazing. What that means is that you just have to be put in their face, put in their mind, and put in their heart so they can recognize and remember you when it really matters. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Great. Another thing is just us, unfortunately, people focusing on the negative. What do I mean by that? Focusing on the negative aspects of the sales world, right? Like, oh man, I'm gonna have to make these calls, or oh, I hate my lead generation system, oh, I hate my website, or these people, these guys, the way they do these things in my company is this way. Unfortunately, when we're focusing on the negative aspects, what you're doing is deterring your mind from focusing on the things that you can control. Guys, the most important thing is recognizing who's in control, which is you. What you control is how you actually use that time efficiently so that we can actually focus on being positive and being profitable, right? Not setting daily goals.
Yeah.
Okay, goals, right? Most of the time, people, they said that if people were sales managers, it's a little bit easier to lead other people. But when it comes to leading yourself, we usually will slack on ourselves a lot more. And so we have to create KPIs, right? Yep. Key performance indicators. What are you doing every single day that you're going to make sure that you ensure that you are building your business? A lot of people say, oh, I don't have leads, but did you commit to doing 30, 40, 34 presentations a day, right? Did you commit to putting that number? I'm just saying a number that's something, maybe that's what I do, but I'm trying to say what you have to find your number. You need to know your KPIs. You need to know what it takes for you to achieve the sales mechanism numbers that you need to do as well. Other things is just saying, one of the biggest things also is that, people don't even embrace actually being salespeople. How do you ever expect to do well in your business when you don't even consider yourself a salesperson? I talk to people all the time. I remember one day I went out to see a house, and I was like, oh, like how long have you been doing this? What's your career in sales? He's like, I'm not a salesperson, or no, I don't consider this sales. I'm not a salesperson. Obviously sometimes in life there've been connotations created in this field. But guys, let's make no mistake. Sales is life. Okay? And so we have to recognize that every decision that we're making is a sales decision, because your job is to influence others, and more importantly, we want to influence ourselves. And so if you don't even see yourself as a salesperson, you're not going to actually be able to put the work in to actually be great at what you do. And last but not least, I'll just say people just don't invest in themselves. What do I mean by that? Okay? Guys, these things matter, okay? Doing things like getting haircuts, upkeep, right? Clothes that you wear, buying clothes, what you look like, sleeping enough, right? Eating the right foods, having the right energy. Guys, those things truly matter, right? Because if your job is to be efficient, your job is to give your customer 100% of what is necessary for you to actually complete your sales, you owe it to those people who are going to take their hard-earned money and give it to you to give them your 100%. And that takes investment, making sure you're prepared yourself, right? And I also say, obviously, upskilling, like the people who showed up today. Investing the time it takes to say, guess what? I need to be reminded for veterans, sometimes people who are new to this, is there certain things that I can pick up, little things, small by small, little bit, that can help me increase myself. So guys, these are just certain things that we can do. People do the struggle, but little things that we can change to increase our profitability.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. See, the biggest problem with working with him is he has such good shit, and then I want to abandon all the crap that I wanted to do. No, really, and that's the worst thing for a trainer. It's like we're butterflies in the field. So here, write this down. If you're writing notes, write this down. And then don't write anything down for the rest of the day if you have to, all right? But I want you to write this down, right? If I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to find out?
Fast as possible.
You think? You think? Right, I agree with that. And that's why when you look at the timidity factor, most people don't bring up the very thing that will kill their sale. If I'm talking to somebody, this is what I say, literally in the first 3 sentences. Bob, when we get together, we're going to make a $1,000 decision. You okay with that? Right? So what does Bob know is going to happen at the end of our conversation?
Let's go.
We're going to make a $1,000 decision, right? But if Bob doesn't have $1,000, what is he likely to say before I even go out? I can't make that because I don't have $1,000, right? So again, if I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to find out? Figure out all the things that kill your sale and just bring those up first, right? So Bob, when we get together, we're going to make a $1,000 decision, and we're going to make a commitment to doing X, Y, Z for an hour a day for the next 3 months. You okay with that? So now Bob knows at the end of our hour, we're going to make a $1,000 decision, and if we decide to move forward, he's going to do whatever that is. But most people don't do that. It's like, I don't want to tell him now. Why? Do you think he's going to make money in the hour that he's with you if he doesn't have it? You know, the money fairy's going to show up? No. If he didn't bring it with him, he's not going to find it here. So that's the number one, timidity. Don't be timid, right? Know what kills your sale and bring it up early. If I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to find out?
Immediately.
Right away. Go ahead, Jim.
If we have an hour.
No, on the phone before you ever go out. Absolutely. Well, think, God, this is so good. Okay, so let me, if you and I were going to get together, that's what I'm going to pull it off. Okay. You and I are going to get together, and we're going to make a $1,000 decision, and I'm going to take a check. When do I want to tell you you need to bring your checkbook? Because if I don't tell you ahead of time, you're not with you. Oof. So I'm going to say, so Jim, at the end of our time together, we're going to make a I know, I'm sorry, I'm weird. Sorry about that. I travel, right? So Jim, at the end of our time together, we're going to make a $1,000 decision, right? And this is what we're going to have to decide. And you're going to do X, Y, Z. So you're probably going to want to bring your checkbook, because if we decide to go ahead together, I'll accept a check for $500 and we get started. Again, if I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to know? I want to know before I get right away. Exactly. No, he's right. I don't want to waste a lot of time with people. So I'm going to basically know my list of things to ask you up front that I'm going to ask you on the phone. Because if you say, well, I can't dedicate 3 hours a day, well, fine. If it's $1,000, you don't got $1,000, well, then I'm not your guy. Go put somebody else out of business, right? Now, I'm not being mean about it, but see, that's the thing. I'm not being mean about it. I'm just telling you ahead of time what the relationship looks like. But most people say, well, I don't want to tell them it's $1,000, and they'll say, why? Well, maybe they don't want to meet with me. Really? You think maybe they're doing you a favor by not wasting your time? The number one, one of the first things in professional sales training with our clients is we don't waste time on things that are going to go nowhere. And so many people invest a ridiculous amount of time in something that's never going to go anywhere. And then they wonder why they got all these dead ends they go. The second thing is something he said too, which is SW4N. SW4N. So he did the first part of it. Some will, some won't. Stop whining. So what? Next.
Who's next? Yeah.
Some will, some won't. So what? Stop whining. Next. There are so many people that want to recant all their failures. And yet there's an unlimited amount of people in the world you can do business with, and you're gonna waste time on this one person? Why? Why? There's an unlimited amount of people out there to talk to, and you're gonna lament this? Again, very early in the conversation, on the phone before you go out. You say, this is what's going to happen when we get together. Now, and I tell people all the time, I don't even know if I want to take you as a client. Right? Now, I'm not saying for you guys to do that, but I do it all the time. Why? Because if you're a pain in the ass, I don't want you. Right? You're going to screw up my perfect world? Why am I going to let that happen? So, I'm going to jump on it. That was so good, by the way. Okay, so my session is the day after Labor Day. And John, if you get, I know we're waiting for some other chairs, too. I don't know if did they find the other chairs for us? That was a look of desperation right there. You couldn't see it on the camera, but poor John looks exasperated. All right, so the day after Labor Day. So I want you to kind of think about what that actually means, the day after Labor Day. So now in Michigan, for example, there's a law that says the kids can't go to school until after Labor Day. A lot of Midwest places have that. Yeah, Michigan, definitely. Because we're a big tourist place. We don't want the kids to go back, like here they go back in August. Well, in Michigan, that would kill the tourism for Labor Day and everything else. So the law says the kids can't go back until after Labor Day. And think about just all the stuff that happens during the summer that really, especially here in Tucson, has a profound effect on your sales. You got kids going to school. You got people taking vacations. You got hot weather, right? There's all kinds of these things that are kind of distracting away from that. But there's a unique thing that happens the day after Labor Day. Everybody's at their office at 8 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Everybody is showered and shaved, right? Maybe puts on a tie, right? Goes back, exactly. Everybody's back to work the day after Labor Day because now all of the distractions, all of the things that are redirecting your energies and attention are now gone. The business world gets serious again. The problem being is most people don't, right? The killers in the world be like, yeah, right? Cash register's ringing now. So the day after Labor Day has this very cathartic ideology because it gives you the opportunity to restart that which you started on January 1st. So if you go back to January 1st, right, most people have what? A New Year's resolution. And what do most people have? What are atypical New Year's resolutions? I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to sleep better. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to go to the gym, blah, 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 blah. They're going to give you all these things because there's something in their mind very cathartic about the start of the new year. When it switches from 23 to 24, mentally there's something very cathartic about that. Now, in reality, although there's only one January 1st each and every year, what is there also one, here we are, we're September 13th. How many times does that come a year? Once. It comes once a year. So essentially, you could do the same thing on the 13th of September. You can do it on the beginning of January. But we get this restart that the calendar gives us because now the business calendar, in most cases, isn't January to December. The business calendar, for most cases, is the day after Labor Day until the day the kids get out of school again. This is the business world. You are in it now, right? Your business world doesn't include the 3 summer months. Anywhere on the earth, this isn't unique to us. Back in Michigan, people were going up north and the kids were out of school and there was a million distractions out there. So now we have a gift that the entire business world is now back in business. Obviously a little interaction with Christmas or Thanksgiving, but there isn't that 3-month prolonged do nothing time. And now because people's mentality is now we're back into business, you have to be there too. Yet most people don't, right? The business world goes back into business, but you're trailing somewhere behind those. So this is the opportunity. Now our sessions fall into one of 3 areas. They fall into attitude, behavior, or techniques. So essentially what that means is the techniques are the words. I can give you the words to say. One of the things people say about trainers and coaches, you always know the right thing to say. That's not by random. That's by a lot of hard work and creation. So I know the right thing to say. The behaviors, I can even create the circumstances for you to say those. I can help you create the circumstances to say those. That's behaviors. What I can't do is the attitude, which is move your mouth. I can't force you to say those. So when I say something like what David brought out, if I'm not going to make a sale, when do I want to find out? Well, everybody's going to say right away, and yet very few people are going to do things and say things that are going to jeopardize their sale. Because they don't want to say something they think the person's not going to like me. Well, there's no correlation between making a sale and liking you. If they don't make a sale, it doesn't mean they don't like you. It means whatever you're offering just doesn't fit with them at this point in time. So the day after Labor Day has this very psychological effect. And that's what I want to focus on today. We want to focus on the attitudinal part of it. This is the mid-year reset that we're given. Most people come out of the gate very strong, right? They have a lot of plans for the new year, right? And here's a lot of what we hear. So we hear, I'm going to be better in my social media. I'm going to do better follow-up. By the way, follow-up is what kills most people, is follow-up. They just do a terrible job. Yeah. Or they contact them, like you said, once or twice, and then, oh, you didn't call me back. Okay, fine. It's almost like, I use the analogy in terrible follow-up, is like your first date. Historically, most people don't marry the first person they dated, right? Anybody here marry the first person? Because you'll be the anomaly in the world, right? Most people don't marry the first person. In fact, most first dates were terrible. Mine was fabulous, right? But most people's is terrible, right? They're socially awkward, right? And the girl or guy or whatever the circumstances, they're socially awkward, and you really don't know what to do or where to go or what to say, and you're kind of a dork, and right? But most people don't go, but because they had a bad experience on their first date, they don't go, that's it, I'm done. I'm done. I'm going to be a priest. I'm celibate. I'm never going out again. Dating's not for me. No, of course not. And yet we always fall so short in our follow-up. So when you think of the day after Labor Day, again, this is an attitudinal session. This gives you the opportunity to realign for the year for a couple of reasons. Number one, if you have a quota. Say, for example, you're in an industry where you have to make a certain amount to keep your job, make the money you want, whatever the circumstance, but you have some kind of number you've got to hit at the end of the year. Now, we're not in the last quarter yet, but we are very clearly knocking on its door. Yeah. And if you don't, what you don't want to do is be, the last week of the year realizing you're not going to get where you need to be. Whether it's a self-imposed number, a sales manager imposed number, the amount of money that you need, whatever the circumstances are, you don't want to have to be at the end of the year to do that. You want to have adequate time in which to make the change. That's why the gift is given of Labor Day. Now the world goes back into labor. I want you to have that same ideology. So again, this is very much an attitudinal session. So here's what I want you to write down. Well, first of all, it gives you a natural restart to the year. So I want you to write that down. I want you to think of Labor Day like January 1st. Again, most people have this very cathartic approach, the idea of January 1st, the new year, the blank slate, the new start. I want you to take that same concept, and I just want you to apply it to today, right now. Even though physically today is not the day after Labor Day. But the idea is that this is, for a good example, this is our first session here after Labor Day. If this session skews like all the other sessions skewed, this should be our best attended session of the year today. Why? Because a lot of people are now, everybody's back in business, right? The kids are back in school, there's no vacations. Now you have to be serious about the money you're making or not making. And now you have to refocus on the things you're doing. So that was the number one. Number two, all right? When you think of that restart ideology, I want you to revisit what you originally identified in the beginning of the year. So did anybody and I'm not going to beat up on anybody, did anybody have a business goal on the beginning of the year and said, this is what I'm going to do better at? And if not, I'll create one that I can use as an example. A lot of people say, I need to do better referrals, right? I need to get better referrals, right? Which is a very simple thing, right? And it's something you should want. I need to get more referrals, okay? And maybe you even had a plan. Now, what we talk about is the idea of 3 strategies and 3 tactics. So this is the implementable part of this session. So what that means is, if my goal is to get more referrals, I'm going to identify 3 strategies on how I'm going to get there. All right? 3 strategies. So strategy number 1. Anybody want to throw one out just as an example? You want to get more referrals. You think? Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not picking on you, but you're absolutely right. How many clients do you have to get a referral? One. One. So if you have one client, you're already in the referral business. You may not be doing it well, but you're already in the referral business. So if the first client that you get or the one client that you get, how are you going to get the referral to them? So maybe you're going to create, so when you finish whatever your business is, right? Whatever your business is finished, I'm going to have a referral letter. I'm going to create a referral letter. Any other ideas?
Yeah,
In
terms of referrals, like, another thing is that some people naturally always wait till the end when they're done with their service
Absolutely.
to ask for referrals,
Yep,
right?
right up front.
Right up front. So
Yep.
what does he mean by that? So building the referral process as part of your normal sales presentation. And so at the end, you say, hey, and how I take people through this process is that at the end, people usually will tell me, will refer me to at least one person. This is the next step. People actually go and do my reviews. Make it part of your process from the beginning and not having to wait until after you're done. Just make it part of your normal presentation from up front.
Yeah, up front. Let's throw another one on just so we can clear that out. Anybody want to throw one on before I do? So we want to get more referrals. We're going to create a referral letter that we're going to give to our clients somewhere in the sales cycle. We're going to develop a posture where we're going to talk about it up front. This is what it sounds like, by the way. This is the actual language. Larry, as we move on in our relationship, and when we get to the point when you've got a value back many times over, would you feel comfortable introducing me to family, friends, business associates that you are involved with that might benefit from what I do? Now, I'm asking this up front. I'm not waiting till the end. The mistake most people make is they wait for that until the end. And here's what happens. This is the conversation. You're done, you're finished, you picked up your check, whatever, and you're like, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, it was so great to work with you. Here's some of my business cards. If you know anybody, I can help if you can give it out, right? Right? And as you're walking away and Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and they're waving from you from, behind the drape and stuff you're pulling out of the driveway, and as you pull out, this is what happens. Right? Your cards go from their hand into the garbage. Because they're not in the business of doing the business for you. Oof. We do an entire session on just getting referrals. But let me give you another one, okay? I want a video. We're going to set up later today, and we're going to have, David's going to be doing little 30-second videos of your experience with this class. It's going to be a video testimonial. And you're going to get up in front of the camera and say, I love the class, it's great, I get a lot of stuff out of it. If you don't feel like that, then don't get up in front. I would never want somebody to say something they didn't actually feel. But for our purposes, these are the three things we're going to get referrals. So everybody follow along with me, all right? So now we're going to identify the things that we wanted to do in the beginning of the year. For whatever reason we didn't. Now we get our natural reset to go back and such. Each one of the strategies now has 3 tactics of how I'm going to get there. So the letter, right? So what would be a tactic to create the letter? Well, you could create the letter yourself. You could get a template, right? It could be an invitation, right? Like a note card, thank you note card asking for a referral, right? But for our purposes, it's going to be some form of creation. We got to make this letter, right? Then we're going to probably want to get envelopes, maybe printed envelopes, right, that look very professional, right? We're going to have to make a little bit of an investment because, again, we want to have a positive image. The thing is, if we didn't plan it now, it's not going to be ready when we get to it, all right? So now we're going to print some things, okay? So now we're going to make the letter. We're going to print the letter, and say, for example, inside of there, we want to have a coupon. I'm not saying you should, but I'm using that just as an example. You have a coupon. And that coupon is good for something that would be of value to an existing client. All right, something down the line, something now, some way they can take advantage of something that's there. So the idea, again, yes, exactly, big dollar bills, it's always a good thing. But ultimately the idea is, again, in the day after Labor Day, is an understanding where all the things we committed to in the beginning of the year, we now need to resurrect, especially if we've not done them, and most people haven't. You look at the attrition rate. I always have this great story that I like to tell, is that I had a club back in my office in Michigan. So I was in the Southfield Towers in Michigan, right? So everybody knows where Southfield is, right? And it's 32 floors up. Well, it's got a health club on the main floor. And that's where I would go at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning and work out before my day. I'm a really social guy. So if I saw a new face in the club, I was the first person, hey, how are you? I'm Don, welcome, right? Well, I did that for about 3 or 4 years, and what I realized is that, you know, there was a lot of people there the day after Labor Day, right? There's a lot of people there the first day of the year, right? The first business day of the year. Club was packed. There was line for the showers, line for all the equipment. And then I realized, wait a second. Most of these people aren't going to be here in 3 weeks,
usually
4
3
weeks.
Yeah.
You know, so I had a kind of an unofficial rule. If I saw you into February, I introduced myself, right? Because most people didn't make it. They falled off. And yet this gives you the opportunity to reset yourself. This gives you, again, the day after Labor Day. The entire world goes back into business. You look at most of the budgets for advertising, don't happen in the summertime. When are they? September, October, November, December, especially if you're triggered in Christmas. The world is telling you this is the most serious time. And yet, you know, the killers in the world will get that. Most don't. They kind of drag whatever mediocrity they were doing from the summertime and just kind of hope it's going to change. I'm not going to go to networking. I'm not going to do any advertising. I'm not going to do any social media. I'm going to do nothing. I'm going to do everything I can to keep myself a secret. And then you lament when your business is for shit. Right? Now, I'm not a smart guy. Don't say anything. All right? All right. But I can tell you that's probably not going to work. So now we apply just the very simple principles to who, what, where, when, why, and how. I find that a lot of times the simplest things are the easiest things.
Easiest, yep.
Right? And there is, in sales, there is a kind of a sales 101. These are the kinds of things that work, and they will always work. You can't internet them, you can't online them, you can't AI them. We were talking over breakfast. You can't fax them or email them or anything. These are the basic tenets of all sales because they're the basic tenets of all interpersonal communication. As long as there's a person on the end of this writing a check, all of this stuff works. The only way this doesn't work is if you don't use it. Right? There's very few guarantees in the world, but I will tell you, if you prospect and you look for referrals and you do these types of things, they will absolutely positively work 100% of the time. So if you look and just look at the obvious things, right? The who's. It's the day after Labor Day. Who should I be connecting with? Who are the people out there that I should be talking to? And amazingly enough, it may not be the people that you thought about in January. I often tell people, go back and look at your day planner. If you've got like a paper day planner, an electric day planner, or something like that. Go back. Who were you talking to in January, in February, in March? You know, you were making appointments in January with people that you thought were important enough to make appointments. You were giving up your time, the most valuable commodity, in January for these people. Well, what happened to them? The meeting you had in February that you thought was, really going to go great. Well, what happened to it? Why didn't that turn, again, perfect reset. It gives you the opportunity to go back and recorrect. So who are the people you needed to be in your world? Customers, friends, mentors, coaches, what else? Business associates. You're you're looking and you're saying, here we are in the middle of the year. We now need to refocus. Who do I need in my world? Again, it may be somebody that you knew in January that for whatever reason never made the connection. And when I say who, although it could potentially be a person, a lot of times it might be a group or an industry. Now, obviously, I'm partial to networking. I believe that networking is the best way to get people. Why? Because networking, in my opinion, networking starts where every other form of marketing hopes to end up, which is face-to-face. No matter what you're doing, whether you're doing internet or advertising or social media, it doesn't make a difference. Your goal is at the end of that to be face-to-face. Well, we start that way. So we beat everybody else to the punch by starting in that situation. So the who's, the what's. What do you need to do? Well, if you're doing nothing, that's a pretty broad stroke. Because, again, most people do nothing. And they're convinced that something is going to happen. Rarely, and again, I'm not a smart guy, but in my 62 years on the earth, I learned one thing. Rarely is the application of nothing ever had a beneficial turn. I cannot think of a time when I did nothing and it improved anything. You know, historically, it gets worse when you do nothing, right? You know, so you're sick, don't take any medicine. Don't go to the doctor. You know, it's probably not going to turn out well. So You've got the what that's going to be involved. The where. Where do I need to be? Well, that's pretty simple, right? For those that are writing notes and for those that are joining us electronically, write this down. If you're sitting across the desk from someone who cannot write you a check, don't be there. Okay? Well, see, and that's why people go, oh my God, you're the most amazing sales trainer. I'm like, really? If you're impressed with this, our other really good stuff will floor you. Yeah. And yet people go, no, really. I mean, because I'll say, they'll be like, wow, I saw fire for the first time just now. But no. And so many times people go places where nobody's going to give them any money. They sit in their home office, right? And they're like, don't look at me. Don't look at me. You know, they buy 500 business cards 3 years ago. They got 475.
Left.
Yeah, left. And they're like, well, I don't want to give them away if they're just going to throw them away. I'm like, give away the 475, right? You might get some thrown away. But God forbid somebody actually knows who you are or that you're in business, right? But don't keep it a secret. Don't let them know, right? Again, who, what, where? Where should I be? Well, I think you should be in networking. I think you should be out in the world, right? STP, right? It was the old oil company additive. See the people. Be out in the world. Don't go through drive-thrus. Don't go through drive-thrus. Drive-thrus are a sucker's game. Go in, stand in line, hope that there's somebody in front of you and somebody behind you. If I'm not dressed like this, this is the armor of a salesperson. What am I wearing? Larry, what does my shirt say? I wear this, and what else? Don Zavis Sales Training. White polo shirts, black lettering. Why? I got a closet full of Ralph Lauren clothes. When Ralph Lauren wears a Don Zavis Sales Training shirt, I'll start wearing my Ralph Lauren shirts again. Because I've never been in line at the bank and somebody goes, wow, is that a Ralph Lauren? No, but they're going to say sales training. What kind of sales training you do? You have magnets on your car that say astrologer. Has anybody ever gone, hey, I saw the magnet on your car? See?
You're looking at my car door. Do that for have your car.
Yeah, but don't put a magnet on your car because people might know what you do. And yet, they're right next to the bus that says, Osborne and Goodwin, next to the truck that says, who doesn't know Amazon, right? You think Amazon really doesn't need to advertise. Budweiser spends $1 million to put Bud logo on the hood of a NASCAR. You think that anybody doesn't know who that is? Really? Home Depot? Like, Home Depot, I've not heard of that. No. All right? Who, what, where? Where do you need to be? Again, this is your reset. The business is out there. You just got to be in front of it. Don't keep yourself a secret.
I think a lot of people actually negate your always say most of the time the people who matter are already in your pocket. We neglect to talk to the people who are actually in our circle, right?
Yes.
We naturally want to go outside the circle. I have to find new people. New people need to know about me. But in reality, you guys are talking with your family with. You go eat lunch with. We go to the bar with.
Yep.
You go to the sports games with. But how many people? If you could ask some of your friends, like, they don't even know exactly what you do for a living. And that's literally a waste of your time. When he talks about where, it should be everywhere, right? Everywhere should be the right time. Any time is the right time to let people know what you do, why you do it, and how you can help others.
Yes, that's the when, by the way. Yeah. And the answer is now.
Now, yeah.
Now. We can't change the past. There's no guarantee of a future. What is the only thing that you can influence? Now. You can't change the past. There's no guarantee of a future. That's why I tell people, the word, now is a present. It's a gift, right? You can influence the now. And I see people all the time. They'll be like, yeah, well, call me in 3 months. And I'm like, you called me because you were on the verge of bankruptcy. Is Aunt Sally on life support in the hospital swirling the drain or something like that? Unless that's the case, you probably want to do something now, right? If you went to the doctor and the doctor says, gee, I'm really sorry, but you have cancer, right? Here's what you're not going to say. Well, listen, Doc, the holidays are coming up. I'm busy. Thanksgiving, Christmas. Probably want to take the kids trick-or-treating. Tell you what, I'll catch up with you beginning of January. You know what I'd say? Give me something. Stick something in me now. We're starting in the office. I don't know what it is, but something's going in. Because again, if it's important enough, you start now. And yet we live in this world of kick the can and kick the can. And eventually, I will tell you, you run out of can, but you also run out of space to kick the can in. All right? So the when is always now. So you've got the who, you've got the where, you've got the why. Now we're down to the when. And then we're ultimately going to the why. You got to have a why. Now, my why, interestingly enough, and this will not come as a surprise to anybody, is my ego. My ego is so big, I can't lose. I can't lose. It's not a desire to win. It's an absolute abhorrent to lose. If there was a contest, who can throw these glasses the farthest? When you all leave, I'd be out on the field practicing. Why? Because winning is learned. Losing is also learned. So if you want to hire somebody, you want the captain of the football team, you want the guy who is the valedictorian, you want the person that's had a history of winning. Why? Because that person, to them, winning is the only other option. Now, there's a lot of other, and I'm not saying that if you're not captain of the football team, you're not the valedictorian. I was neither of those, right? But I also didn't care either one of those things. But the thing is that people right nowadays are so willing to allow themselves to be victimized and blame everybody under the sun, right? It's not me. You know, we were talking about 9/11, which we had the anniversary just a few days ago. And I was a volunteer fireman for 15 years. I've actually been in building collapses and fires and crappy stuff. So my heart goes out to that particular thing. But there were people that were blaming their business failures for 5 years in the future on 9/11. You know, we never recovered from 2008, right, the real estate fallout. There's a million reasons. I had a mentor of mine say, either you're going to find a reason or you're going to find an excuse. Ooh. You get to choose, all right? You're going to find a reason or you're going to find an excuse. You're not a victim. Nobody cares about your suffering, right? Nobody does. I know it's like a hard, terrible statement to say, but the vast majority of people really don't care about your misery. You know, but I can't want it more than you do. I can't want your success more than you do. I can't want your time. I can't want your income. I can't want it more than you do. And then ultimately, the final one is how. How am I going to do it? And that's what comes to this. You want to have 3 strategies. Each strategy is going to have 3 tactics. Now, if you struggle with how to do that, tell David, tell myself, or tell John. We will help you get there. Whether you're a client of ours or not, we will always invest time at no cost, right, to help you get there. It's not going to be 6 hours, right? But it will be, because this is a critical element. You don't need to fight the battle on 15 fronts. There's this perception that I've got to be good at 97 different things. The reality is you don't, right? You can be a Cy Young award-winning pitcher with one amazing pitch. For those that don't know that, the Cy Young Award is the #1 pitching award. Now, you don't have to have an amazing fastball, an amazing curve, an amazing slider, an amazing knuckleball. What else? Amazing. You don't have, you could just have one amazing pitch, and you can have that. And yet, most people see their world in terms of, I got to have 19 different things. If you have 3 significant strategies, each one of those 3 strategies has 3 tactics of how you're going to get there, I will tell you this will work. The only way this will not work is if you don't do it. And now you have the benefit of the groundswell of the entire world now is back to work. Now is back to work. So all you have to do is find your way to slide into it. So any question before we go around the room? We're starting over here. What'd you get from today's session? This is the golden nugget. It's called learning verification. Yeah, that's bad. That's bad. It's like if you're hunting and you think you shot something and you track it for 50 feet. Why? It's a good chance it's there. Larry. Yeah.
Starting out.
Yep. Absolutely. Bob, we're just going to do these front tables. Bob.
Well, when you talked about doing oddly enough, started out.
Yep.
There's
Yep. Well, sure. Right. But the idea is, and I tell people all the time, don't assume that what you did 5 years ago is how you're going to be. Most people are terrible on the phone, right? You might have had to make 5,000 calls and none of those got returned, right? But the reality is that now you're better. What you know is better. You're better. We always use what we call frictional business. The frictional business model says you just happen to call somebody when they just happen to need what you just happen to be selling. But it's that blind squirrel ideology. Even the blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then. And yet most people do nothing. Nothing. They do nothing. They do everything they can to keep themselves a secret. And not surprisingly, they get their wish every single time. What you got? Yes, listening is big. Listening is big. Selling is not telling. In the words of the Dalai Lama, right? If you say something, you just get to hear something that you already know. If somebody else says something, you get an opportunity to learn something new. Selling is not telling. We talk 30% of the time. They talk 70% of the time. By the way, that doesn't mean on an hour appointment, you talk for the first 20 minutes. I've seen people make that mistake. So I'm going to do my third up front, right? No. No, not that. What you got?
Follow up. Negativity.
Yes. Don't be negative. Great book. Yes. Yeah, and it's in this room. There is so much positive attraction in this room. That's a great book. And I know there's a science behind it too, and there's a concept about alignments and cellular stuff.
Correct, yeah.
To me, it really works. The more you're out in the world, the more you connect with people. By de facto, the more sales you get. You got last word.
Now, why wait?
Absolutely. You can't change the past. There's no guarantee of a future. The only thing you can interact with is the present. So there you go, everybody. Thank you so much. We are adjourned for today. Our networking session starts shortly, about 10 minutes. So go grab something to eat. Where's our fruit plate? No fruit.